Well, we're going to look a little bit at long range, very long range at that actually. So thanks for clicking on to this kind of slightly different Vogan's European outlook. But before we get into the video, please like, share, and indeed subscribe. Do go on to markvoganweather.com. I do actually have the July forecast now released on the website. That was produced this morning. And I do have my ideas with regards to what July is going to produce. Unsettled start versus a likely more settled second half to the month. But do check out markvoganweather.com. I will leave a link in the description below to that outlook. And there will be a couple of little bits added in over the next day or so to that article, because I want to actually score the June forecast. And also I want to put a couple of figures to the, say for example, the highest temperature I expect to see during the month of July and whatnot. So do check out that outlook, available now free on markvoganweather.com, of course. But in today's video, I want to look and share my very initial thoughts with regards to the winter 2023-2024. It is going to be very quick in terms of touching on various aspects that I think will be key, driving mechanisms towards the winter season. There's so many things to cover, and that is why I'm actually sharing a few of my thoughts now, and I'm going to be building the ideas as we progress through the rest of the summer, and more so, of course, into the autumn season, and it becomes a lot more clear in terms of how the sea surface temperature anomalies are responding, how they're shifting as we progress through the season and indeed the year. As well as that, we'll see aspects such as the IOD, or the Indian Ocean Dipole. It looks as if that will go positive as we progress into the autumn season. As well as that, we're going to have a look at the behavior of the El Nino as well, because that is going to, I think that will hold the cards this year with regards to the type of winter we'll see, not just here in the UK, Europe, and of course Ireland, but also across the entire hemisphere. I think we could be looking at, depending on how the El Nino behaves, how it strengthens. Does the warm water shift into the Central Pacific? That has a different response to the upper atmosphere over the Northern Hemisphere. And indeed, how strong it gets. What behavior of the Atlantic sea surface temperatures as well. We've got very, very warm waters, as you know, across the central and up the eastern side of the North Atlantic at the moment here. We've got, of course, very cold waters, and I have actually been a little bit, I've not really communicated that very well in recent times, actually, that we do have some very cold waters off the east coast of northeast North America. And what we're going to be keeping an eye on actually over the next few months is, does this cold water start to spread its way east towards Ireland? If it does, that would indicate a bit of a tripole of warm to the north, cool centre, and then warm to the south. That's what you call a tripole. And that sometimes can lead to high latitude blocking, and in turn it can lead to colder pattern here in Western Europe here. So a lot of complicated factors to consider. Still very early, of course, to be able to make any kind of real proper call. But we've got the QBO, that is the quasi-biennial oscillation. That is the mean winds within the stratosphere blowing over the equatorial belt of the planet. And, we're actually, it looks as if we are going to start to see the winds reverse from a westerly to an easterly phase of the QBO, or quasi-biennial oscillation. I do encourage you to check out Gav's WeatherVids, because Gavin has spoken a little bit about the NAO forecast. Do check out his channel. Go in specifically to some of these videos. Excellent content. I do encourage you to check out Gav's WeatherVids if you haven't already done so, because Gavin has already touched on aspects such as the El Nino, the quasi-biennial oscillation, the IOD, I believe, as well, the solar situation, of course, as well. We are about 18 months away from a solar maximum. That has an impact as well, of course. But let's get into the video. So what are we looking at the moment? We've got a very warm Indian Ocean. We've got a very warm Pacific Ocean as well. Of course, there is the warming up against the South American coast, indicative of the El Nino, of course. And of course, we've got a record warm North Atlantic. Now, I could be mistaken, but I think we're already starting to chip away at that warm water to the west of the UK and Ireland here. As low pressure starts to become a little bit more established, we start to get more wind blowing over the surface of the ocean, and therefore we could start to see upwelling, cooling of water deep below the surface up to the surface, and it starts to trim back that heat over this region just to the west of the British Isles. And I think with time, if we get low pressure for the next couple of weeks, as I expect to see, and if you check out the July outlook, I do discuss that in a bit more detail. I think we're going to start to cool these waters surrounding the UK. I could be wrong. I also think we're going to enhance rainfall over the British Isles in response to that. But this is a terrific article here, just been recently published by Severe Weather Europe, and it talks in great detail, way above my head, by the way. I don't claim to be an expert, but a stratospheric wind anomaly is developing over the equator, expected to impact the weather along with the El Nino in the next winter season here. Do check out this article. I will try to remember to drop a link in the description for this article. Also talks in a lot of detail about the quasi-biennial oscillation and the fact that we are likely to reverse the winds from westerly to easterly. The significance about having an easterly as opposed to a westerly QBO, by the way, is that the westerly QBO can relate to a stronger jet stream blowing, of course, from west to east through the mid latitudes, and also in turn strengthening the polar vortex. That's something we're also going to be talking about in quite a bit of detail in the coming weeks, months ahead. Also, when you've got an easterly QBO, that can, of course, that's winds blowing over the equatorial region from east to west. That sometimes has a frictional effect on the polar jet stream in the mid latitudes during the winter season. It also can have an impact on slightly disrupting, slowing down the strength of the main zonal winds within the stratosphere over top of the pole also here. So all these things are connected. What is my hunch as we go forward? Well, we've got competing factors. We've got also favourable factors as well. Now, a positive IOD, which is, of course, we've got cooling over the waters surrounding Indonesia and Australia. We've got warming to the west over the western portion of the African continent. Of course, that is a positive Indian Ocean dipole. That can have a positive impact if you're looking for cold weather in Europe and the Northern Hemisphere. The El Nino is going to be critical. Do we see this strong warming against the South American coast as we push towards late autumn and into the winter season? I think if we have a strong El Nino, winter will be milder than average. It will be wetter, potentially stormier, with a stronger polar jet stream, extending from North America to Europe here, with frequent areas of low pressure affecting the British Isles. So lack of blocking, lack of cold conditions. If that water over the equatorial Pacific shifts the core of warmth into the central portion of the Pacific, that can lead to colder conditions and more blocky conditions across the Northern Hemisphere, including the North Atlantic. Also, the North Atlantic, if we get, like I said before, that cooling extending its way into the central portion of the North Atlantic, you get a bit of a tripole developing, and that can feed back to the atmosphere, enhancing blocking over the North Atlantic. So that shuts down the westerlies, the storminess, the mild conditions, and then we could start to tap colder air from either the north, northeast, or the east as we progress through the winter season. I think, we could go back and forth depending on where that warm water sets up over the eastern and central portion of the Pacific Ocean. So, like I say, there's a lot of things to consider. Also, rainfall distribution and temperature during particularly the month of September can also be key in terms of what type of pattern we may have later down the road. So sometimes a warm, dry September can then correlate to a warmer winter across the UK. Cooler, wetter conditions can lead to sometimes colder conditions across the UK, Ireland, and Western and Northern Europe as well here. So I'm just basically sharing with you today some of these initial thoughts. The QBO is likely to go positive, to go negative, which is an easterly phase. That is favourable for cold conditions across Europe this upcoming winter season. A positive Indian Ocean dipole can be a favourable phase as well. Also, the El Nino could have a negative impact in terms of if it stays further east, closer to South America, then that can have a negative impact if you're looking for a cold winter. And of course, if we get a wet autumn here in the UK and Ireland, that can sometimes lead to where the low pressure and cold conditions wants to go a month or two later down the road. We've seen a record wet November in 2009. We had, of course, 09-10 winter. We had also quite a wet autumn last year. And we had a cold December last year, which is something that we need to factor into the equation as well here. I'm just trying to remember all the different aspects that is worth sharing with you, of course. So let's have a look at the model. This is the CFSV2 here for the month of September, and it looks as if we kind of see a bit of a peak in the El Nino. If we skip back, you notice here that through the summer months, we see that warming starting to extend out towards the Central Pacific. The deepest reds are actually present during the month of July and into August. And there we see from September to October into November. You notice here how we start to see the warmest waters shift away from the South American coast towards the Central Pacific. That could have a positive impact. We also have cooling waters trying to extend eastwards from Newfoundland into the central North Atlantic. There's that tripole of warm, cold, warm. That could have a significant influence on the upper air pattern as we progress into the winter season. What's the CFSV2 500 millibar height anomalies looking like for the month of November? Well, it looks as if we have got a bit of a kind of block to the north. That could be a fairly chilly overall look. That could be a bit of a negative NAO pattern, actually, if we get that with the negative to the south, high pressure to the north. How about December? Well, you notice here that we've got a negative to the west of the British Isles. That could be two things. If we get that negative a little bit closer to the UK, that could be fairly cold. Notice here we've got a Scandinavian block showing up. Also up towards the eastern portion of the Arctic region. That also could signify some fairly cold conditions across the west of Europe here. As we press into the month of January, we've got that positive to the north. So it's indicating a bit of a blocky type setup, which is quite interesting given the fact that some of these moles are indicating a strong El Nino. You typically wouldn't see this if we have a strong El Nino with warmest waters over the far eastern Pacific. But the CFSV2 is shifting that core of warmest water out into the central Pacific. So that's interesting. Now, the solar cycle is another thing. We're 18 months away from a maximum. Sometimes during solar maximums, that can have negative impact if you're looking for cold conditions, or a positive if you're looking for a mild winter, of course. Looking at the month of February, we've got that block over the North Atlantic. If you notice here, we've got the negative over Scandinavia and Europe. So again, that could signify something a little bit colder. March, we've got that positive west-based negative NAO signal showing up. Folks, we're months away, but I'm simply just wanting to share with you a little bit of my ideas with regards to what I think we are looking at, what's on the table, so to speak, as we go forward. Pretty much ran out of time, so I hope you enjoyed today's video. Please drop a comment and let me know in the comment section below what you think yourself with regards to the upcoming winter. Please like, share, and subscribe, and do check out that July outlook on marfoganweather.com as well. Enjoy the